Go ahead, Corinne. Corinne, you're muted.
Well, welcome. That we are so excited about tonight and hearing from some amazing guest speakers and sharing with all of you a holistic approach to your brain. And I think you're going to love the information that you're going to be hearing. And we'll go ahead and start with our first one. We're going to hear from Ashley Geigel and a testimony on how the NeuroIM product has helped her.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again tonight. I have been loving the NeuroIM lately. As we know, or as we're going to learn from Greg later on, NeuroIM has so many benefits that help support our mood, which has been the one that I have benefited from the most. So as a young mother, I have 4 children that were all under the age of 8 at a young age is what I mean by that. But I used to be very reactive. And when frustration and irritation would set in with my children, I would become the yeller. I would be, I would let anger take over and I wouldn't be able to process where my emotions were. And once I started with the NeuroIM, I found that I was able to really find like emotional management or help, or I don't want to say control because I don't feel like it was a control thing, but I was able to process my emotions and be take that second that would able, or take that breath, take that moment that would be able to I would be able to be a more positive reaction versus always a negative and yelling. So aside for the immunity boosting benefits that I have received from NeuroIM, that is one that I really am grateful for that not a lot of people talk about. So just the clear thinking. So yeah.
Ashley, that is awesome. I know that feeling. I know that peace of mind that comes with being able to hold back a little bit. So thank you so much for sharing, because that is one that isn't shared a lot, because we do focus a lot on our health and the immune system. So that is great. We're now going to hear a bit from Sarah. Actually, I guess we're going to hear from Holly. I was thinking that was a surprise screen for me. And Holly is so great. And she's going to teach us about why do I need adaptogens daily. And so Holly, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Great. Thanks, Corinne. So why do we need adaptogens daily? So what are adaptogens? And I think this is something that comes up a lot. It comes up a lot for my clients when I'm talking about it. And the way I describe them is that they are a specific class of herbs that help us reduce the impact of stress on both our mind and our body. They are the closest thing to magic we're going to find in nature. And we have to remember that our mind and our body are completely connected. So if we're working on healing, we have to heal both, not just one or the other. Next slide, please. Okay. So adaptogens, in order for an herb to be in this class of herbs, they have to be safe for daily use, which also products are. We can take them every single day, and some I take multiple times a day. They need to have a wide variety of medical plant components, and they need to balance the functions of both the mind and body. And a great example that I like to use for this is blood sugar. So if you have issues with your blood sugar not being as steady as you'd like, your adaptogens that you would take for that, like cinnamon or yerba mate, would come in and help either raise your blood sugar up if it was a little too low, or bring your blood sugar down. So it helps balance those waves so we don't have as many peaks and valleys, or at least it's not as big of peaks and valleys in our blood sugars. So it's going to balance the functions of both the mind and the body. It helps with stamina. It gives us extra energy, and it's going to strengthen our immune response. And let's face it, right now, that's super important. There are many benefits also to adaptogens. So they can reduce the impact of stressors. They can help you to recover, and they customize their benefits to match what our needs are at any given time. They are magic. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this when I was talking about blood sugars, but this is a great model of how adaptogens work. And the idea here is if our stress response is like this, with these big curves, they go up, big peaks and valleys and down, the adaptogens are going to work to make that a more even, steady line. And that's all I've got.
Holly, thank you so much. I think we've all had those peaks and valleys. And by using adaptogens, I like how you said they're not as deep or they're not as big. So I love that adaptogens can help support us in those ways. Our next testimony is from Tammy Bontrager. So Tammy, go ahead and come on.
All right, thanks so much for having me. This is one of my favorite Solle products, and I know that I say that about a lot of them, but this is one that has affected my family, and I'm so forever grateful for NeuroIM. It's really been about 15 years ago. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and his whole mother's side of the family had it. I think there were like 9 kids or something like that. And like all of them ended up having Alzheimer's. And so when he was diagnosed with it, it was kind of one of those, okay, where we know where this is going. But so it was hard to, manage that. But the neurologist did say that it looked like his was kind of a slow progressing, which was awesome. And so he had, pretty much lived in a state of frustration and a lot of confusion just because he couldn't remember things. And he would tell you, it's like, oh, I just can't remember anything. My memory's just not very good. And it's like, yeah, we know. And, but anyway, he didn't really seem like he was progressing very, very rapidly. So we were thankful for that. Well, going back to a couple of years ago when we were at Snowbird, and I think it was Snowbird when NeuroIM was introduced, and I was so thankful, and I couldn't wait to get him on that. And so I asked him if he would start taking it daily, and he's like, well, if I can remember to take it, I will. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll get you something going so that you'll have that every day. And I said, would you do a favor for me and just try and write down how you're feeling, like if your brain feels any different, if you feel any different. And he's like, well, if I can remember to do that, I will. And I said, okay. So I would touch base with him every so often and say, how's it going? And I said, are you taking your pills? And he said, well, I think so. And he had been, because mom would put him in his little pill case every day. And I'd say, do you feel any different? And are you noticing anything different? No, I don't think I can tell anything. Okay, so fast forward several months, and mom said that she could really tell a difference in his memory and just his attitude and recall and stuff like that. Well, then he had run out, and she's like, order more. They definitely are making a difference. And so I got him back on them. And then, so he had been on them a couple years, and one of his last neurology appointments, the doctor told him, you are doing so well and so fantastic that I'm almost tempted to downgrade your diagnosis of Alzheimer's to age-related dementia, which was huge. I think that he is getting worse. He definitely is, he won't remember a conversation just, right after you have it, but he still remembers all of us, and he's doing really well, all things considered, because he's had it for so long. But I just find it fascinating that, and now he will ask my mom, he'll say, well, I think I need my brain pills. And that's what he calls them. So we always call him his brain pills. And so we're thrilled. I love it for that. And then I was just supposed to talk about that, but just real quick, I would love to say that my daughter-in-law has had so many concussions and has had migraines and headaches for several years. She had been on trying to get medication that wouldn't work, and she'd just been doing tons of different things. And she has been on neuro, and really it's about one of the only things that has really helped lessen the severity of her migraines. So yay, NeuroIM.
Tammy, both of those are just amazing. And I think we're all thinking about our loved ones and people we know that are like, oh, who could we share this with? So I love that you shared both of those. What a great thing for all of us to be able to take that knowledge and be able to share, because that's what we're here to do, is share our knowledge. So thank you so much, Tammy.
You're welcome.
All right, now we've heard a little bit about NeuroIM and the amazing things that it's doing for some of us and our family members. So I'd like to introduce our president and founder of Solle Naturals, Mr. Greg Halliday, and he's going to be talking a little bit about NeuroIM and some of those properties and why we have it. Greg, how are you?
I'm great, Corinne. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here with you. NeuroIM is an interesting product because originally, well, typically all mushroom products are maybe feature one mushroom or two. And we originally had slated 12. There are 11 in NeuroIM. And the reason for that is because the 12th variety, which we were really interested in, it didn't come in a form that we felt like was reliable. We really want consistency with them. And so we settled on 11. And I have to say, from the very start, Tammy was right. It was at Snowbird, which was the fall of 2019. So here we are. Can you believe it? We're actually 4 years since NeuroIM. No, just over 3 years. Fall of 2022, and then we got a few months. But NeuroIM went well beyond what we even had imagined it would do. We knew a lot of the properties of these mushrooms, and what we really took are 11 of the very best and the most studied that we felt also would work well together. And I will say people see so many different things, but in general, the focus is kind of what Tammy shared. They're brain pills. They also happen to be amazing immune help, but they are all about the brain. And the reason is so many of the different mushrooms work in different ways to improve the functioning of our whole cognitive area of health. And since that's connected to everything else, it makes a pretty big impact on everything. In preparation for tonight, I was asked to just select one of those mushrooms. So I'm only going to tell you about one. There are 11, and they're super interesting. If you get a chance, buy the book, 10, sorry, did I say 11? It's actually 10 that are in there, and we were going to have 11. Sorry, I think I said 12 and 11. It's 10 and 11. There's a book called 10 Medicinal Mushrooms that Dr. Allison Caldwell Andrews wrote. It's an enjoyable read. It really is actually science read that reads like an entertaining article. So it's not heavy, I promise you, and it's worth it because when you get done reading it, it features each of the 10 mushrooms that are in there. And I'm just going to tell you about the first one tonight. You kind of see why people that have had damage, like Tammy mentioned the concussions, accidents, where there's been impact, and some things just haven't come back to normal, even sometimes for years. You kind of can see why people who will use NeuroIM with enough time, letting their body heal, can start to see changes. Because these aren't just the mushrooms that you slice up raw and you stick on pizza. They're actually all medicinal, and most of them could be adaptogens. We know that several of them are adaptogens, and we heard a little bit about what an adaptogen is earlier. It's probable that the majority of these are. It's absolutely confirmed that several, I think at least 4 of them would be confirmed. adaptogenic. And why that makes a difference is because it doesn't matter exactly the nature of what I'm struggling with that has to do with mental clarity, brain health, memory, emotions, mood, anything that kind of runs through that area. An adaptogen has nutrients put a certain way that boost either side of weakness. If we think of balance as centered, and almost all health conditions can be looked at this way, where they become kind of overactive out of balance, hyperactive, or active to an extreme versus worn down, chronically undernourished, under-energized, and just not happening or barely happening. You can kind of look at most health things that way. It's actually fascinating to look at health more on a scale of balance than simply looking at terms and numbers, even though I know it's all instructive. With the brain, I think it's the same way. And mushrooms, especially adaptogens, they provide both sides. So that what happens is sometimes we'll say, oh, they adapt to our body's needs, but what it really is they have everything our body needs, regardless of its particular situation. It finds the nutrient to plug the holes that are there or to bolster the weakness that's there. That's at least the way that I like to explain it or view it. So let me tell you about the first one in NeuroIM tonight, and I'll just talk about that one. It's called lion's mane, and there are a lot of lion's mane products out there, and a lot of times they'll be combined with just one or two other things. I think the reason for this is lion's mane, I think most surely is an adaptogen. It's a really pretty mushroom that has these narrow flowing like the mane of a lion. And so you look at the whole thing and you can see why it's called lion's mane. But I think it's one of the best reparative and restorative mushrooms that are out there. It is shown in studies to bolster our mood. Corinne talked a little bit about anxiety, even depression. People that just start eating lion's mane as part of their diet notice a difference there. So it surely is a mood normalizer, like all true adaptogens are, but also it is shown in studies, and this is what's so interesting about the book that Dr. Allison wrote. She just gives you little bullet point summaries of a variety of studies with lion's mane. There are several that show autoimmune situations, intestinal, like Crohn's, I think she mentioned that, which is an intestinal autoimmune, and protective of various organs like pancreas or liver. Lion's mane actually helps pull down the inflammation in general and break up form and harden things. And we think about the body needs to maintain flexibility and balance. When it becomes rigid, things happen. And we heard a little bit from Tammy about, first, it's also that's exactly what he's with them. Broken down. I think another one they talked about was Parkinson. So there were a number of involved with your nerves and nervous system and brain. People actually felt a difference. The third study was moderate impairment. People saw marked improvement with just eating lion's mane. So it's shown to help there. Why? I think the why for that, well, one of the studies showed that your nerves have these little protective coating around them, the myelin sheath, that actually is with lion's mane. Helps when the body can repair. I don't think, again, my own personal opinion, I don't think the body is very successfully if we're in a state of managed nutrition. So and they're usually chock full of nutrients. When the body gets that, it's amazing what the body can do. The product doesn't cure anything, but they're shown to help with that. Even the coating around the nerves. Also, lion's mane does all those things. It's a repair. It reestablishes things to what extent is different with every person. So I'm fascinated. It might be pretty rapid. I've heard of a few that are people that were in accidents and longer term things, like Tammy's story. I think it happens more often than not with nutrition, where the improvements are gradual, even to the point where sometimes we might go, yeah, I'm not sure I'm noticing much, until we take that nutrition out. And suddenly we realize, oh, it was doing a lot. I just got used to feeling this way, and that was my new normal, and I didn't recognize it compared to what really was my normal for you. Health preventative, something that can happen at every age, from children to really advanced ages. Yeah, I definitely feel like you can't lose adding working NeuroIM.
Greg, I love all the things that you shared. The very first thing that you touched on was the consistency. And I actually was like, oh my word, this whole time I thought there was mushrooms. And then you said 11. I thought, I've read that book, 10 mushrooms, you know? So I love that you said you were looking at that 11th one, but it didn't have that consistency.
Right.
I appreciate that so much about the Soul products, is because I know what I'm going to get. And so many times out there, you don't know what you're going to get, but I know that with Soul. So I love that you talked about that. And Lion's Mane is one of my favorite ones as well. I love how you said it, we're restored and repaired, because that's what we are doing. We're living life every day. And what do we need to do? We need to restore and replenish and repair our body. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, let's see. All right, Ashley, go on to the next one for us. Okay, so we're going to ask a question too. We call this Greg's perspective. It's just another question that we love to dig deep with Greg. Why did you choose the word soul as the company name?
Well, that's a good question, because the reason we founded the company was we saw a need to prepare every formula with nutrition for both physical and mental, or physical and emotional in parallel health objectives. Believing, as we did at the start, that it would give people a better result and also better long-term. And so how did Soul was an effort on our part to try to describe that. So yeah, it's the spelling's unique. That was on purpose, because we want to be able to own the name, but it does sound like SOUL. It's a homonym, and that's intentional, because as we do that, combining the physical part of us with the intellectual, emotional, or you could even say spiritual part of us, that combination together is the soul in the way our worldview. And so we picked the word SOLLE to sound like SOUL, to hopefully remind people that when you look at and work on your health, remember to include all of it, and that nutrition can make a difference physically, for sure, in the way we function, and it can make just as ready a difference emotionally in how we feel. In other words, nutrition does influence both equal. And I think most people will have an easier time believing that it can affect me physically if I improve my nutrition, and sort of like a little harder time believing that emotions and brain can be affected, but they absolutely can. And so that's what came behind the name Soul, to hopefully remind us always to take care of both those aspects of ourselves.
Yes,
and our health.
Like the bigger picture. It's all of us, every testimony with us.
Hi. Excuse me. Well, thank you for having me on. So my experience with NeuroIM has been really great. You know, I heard a lot about it when it first came out, and was just, you know, I kind of see. So before I started taking NeuroIM, I was so frustrated at times. There were countless times during any given day where I would forget something. Like I would forget tasks, forget that I told someone that I would call them, or I would send them an email with information. I would forget commitments for my kids and then feel so bad that I missed an activity or an event. And so many times I would excuse myself saying, this is mom life, right? Like there's just so much going on. I can't remember it all. Or my favorite, if I would just put it in a planner, then I'd remember. But I would feel so let down. I would continue to let myself down. So I decided to start taking NeuroIM. Currently I'm putting, I open up the capsule and I put it in at nighttime in my warm renew before bed. And then I take one additional capsule in the morning when I'm enjoying my cinnamate. So as with many of the Solle products, the change was really subtle. Until one day it wasn't. The tasks that I had, they were miraculously like becoming organized. I didn't even think about it. But my husband and I, we started taking them at the same time. We had, had conversations with people about mushrooms. I've got the book that Greg mentioned from Dr. Allison. And, I had read about it. There's a woman at the farmer's market who sells mushrooms there. And so I was just really intrigued by them. So we started taking NeuroIM just to kind of see what would happen. And one day in the kitchen, I mentioned to him that I felt like I was on my game. I felt like I remembered tasks. I could actually make a list rather than, this is sort of what I'm famous for, is sitting there. And I would sit there with a pen and paper. I got to make a list. And I would go to make that list and I would sit there and I would stare at the sheet of paper and I couldn't remember what I had to put on my list. So I could actually make a list now. And, I made lists. I was checking off tasks. And my husband mentioned that with his job, he oftentimes learns new things and he comprehend things that were being a way that just brought about more clarity. It was easier for him to comprehend new things. So we both feel that this has like changed our brains. It's made it more functional and allowed us to kind of work with it. And it makes all of that other stuff, feel so much better. Your job's better, more efficient. We feel more successful with work and it's really one of those things that it's just another one of the products that we're so grateful that we have because, with that, it kind of trickles into every other aspect of our lives, making not only our physical health, which we know all of that stuff is going on with the, the mushrooms, but, then our emotional, spiritual, mental health is that I feel better about myself because I am getting all of these tasks done and it just feels good.
I love that too, Molly. That is so great. And I want to say right about this time you started NeuroIM, you also were going through some surgery, and what this did for your inflammation and the other things, the other physical health issues you were having so many other benefits too. And I love that you just don't take it for one thing. It can help with so many different things. Oh, so that is so awesome. So awesome. All right. Well, you guys, we just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And if you were invited and you are here, just kind of checking out Solle and seeing what Solle's all about, we want to, extend that invitation to join the Solle family. And it is very simple. We just encourage you to get with the person that invited you here tonight, and they'll be able to go ahead and walk you through the quick steps to go ahead and get that started. Right now we are in some, we talked about a lot about the products, but there is also a business opportunities here as well. And this is something that we are in the middle of right now. I think Jordan said today we are halfway through, and we are having the opportunity to travel with Solle. And this will be a trip to actually Costa Rica, which is one of my favorite places to go with all the Solle guys. We love that. And we're in qualifications, you know, the business has so many things to offer, not only just being able to pay for your product, but also being able to maybe help provide a car or some of these incentive trips that they've taken me places where I've only dreamed about going. So there are lots of different ways. So if you're looking at something going, you know what, I want to be able to help pay for my own product, but there's also a way to add a little extra income into your budget as well on a monthly basis. Another thing that we'd love to say is, you know, these are just a few testimonies that were shared tonight. And we want to invite you, everybody, to be able to share their story. And I think our stories are all at different spots right now. And I think that we would just love to hear anything that you are finding out with any of the Solle products. And it's kind of like how the lady said earlier, sometimes it was gradual, but then when you stop taking it, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you know, I really felt a difference. Or just that consistency of being on the products. But we would love to hear what the Solle products have done for you. And if you have a story about NeuroIM or any of the products specific, be sure and send that to the person that invited you here, or share it with one of us. And we'd love to be able to share it with everybody within our group. Another thing that we can kind of remind you of, and we want to thank you for being here. And if you want little reminders to these calls each week, all you need to do is text the word HOPE to 1-866-256-1970. And you'll get little reminders just so that you'll never miss another one of these. I do love that they are in the Stories of Hope and that they are going live on a weekly basis. But we still love to have people interacting and being part of it with us while we're going live.